All right. Hey, everybody. Whoa, that's new. I
Mhm.
never got that before. It said this meeting is being recorded. So
I
that
heard
must
it.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, this must be a new feature. It
Yeah.
has not happened previously. Anyway, thanks for joining, everyone. I'm here with Jeff Swartz, president and founder of Ethic Advertising. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. We've been chatting over the last few weeks and enjoying it, and um, I appreciate the invite and an opportunity to maybe give a little bit of insight, or at least kind of regurgitate what my experience was to students that are entering a very unique workforce at the moment, or soon to be entering that workforce.
Yeah, and this is actually why I wanted to have you on because of those conversations, and I think the great advice you'll have to offer them. Um, so I need to know, where did you get your foot in? What was that? Yeah, where'd you get your foot in the industry? Where was that? What was that moment that realization, like, oh, I need to be in advertising and marketing and communications? What was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was actually in college. So I toyed around with when I went to college of either doing zoology or veterinary, and of course my dog creeps up on me right on cue with the animal stuff.
You're
Um,
obligated to show the dog now.
yeah, so I was either gonna do zoology or veterinary, become a veterinarian, or I was going to get into advertising. I kind of knew that early on, and as I was probably 20 when I got an internship at an ad agency, and I was already leaning that way, before then. But really, what had happened is I kind of fell in love with the ad agency kind of thing. I got the experience at a small ad agency in Dayton. I went to school at University of Dayton, so I stayed out there for a summer. And the owner really put me through the ringer on learning and getting experience in a bunch of different areas. And that's when I kind of realized, you know what, I can do this. Like this is what I want to do, is open up my own shop.
Hmm.
But at 20, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the skill set, and I knew that to be successful. So I actually, decided to go acquire the capital, to go acquire the skill set over the course of about 10 years before I opened up my own shop, to where
Hmm.
I could be comfortable doing that and think that I would have success. And I graduated in 2007. So I graduated during the recession period, like towards the start of it. It was a very turmoil, uneasy kind of time period, similar
Yep.
to what we have now and different in a lot of ways. And it was just, it was a tough time to get a job, let alone start a company when no one was spending money, when I was young and didn't have skill set. So that's what I did is in college, I figured that this is what I wanted to do. And I made it my goal. And I spent, time working at CBS television, working at a decent sized ad agency on like Church's Chicken and Zales Jewelry across the country and stuff like that. And then, a couple of other things here and there that allowed me to get to a point where I finally was like a now or never moment and decided to take the leap. And now I'm over 5.5 years into ethic advertising, and it's been working out pretty well.
I love your story because you and I are pretty much the same age, and we have our careers kind of hit the similar beats at the same time,
Mhm.
right? So I got my bachelor's in 2007, and I was already working in the industry at that point, and it was 2008 when I decided, like, I want to run my own practice. And so I started it while I was still working for Heinz. So it was just like glorified freelancing, right?
Mhm.
And then it was after I left Heinz and started teaching full time is when that kind of kicked up a gear. But to your point, the money just wasn't there. There was not a lot of clients. The clients that were available, they had low budgets, minimal vision. It's like everyone was just suffering from low self-esteem from 2007 to 2009.
Yeah.
Um, And I'm curious about like what was your first client experience like with Ethic Advertising?
That's a good one. I was lucky enough to have a couple of clients, but I honestly, a lot of times when you leave a sales role in the advertising world to do your own agency, which a lot of people have done that. There's been some successful practices that have evolved that way. There's also a lot, most of them don't succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what they do is that they leave with a book of business or with a flagship client and everything. So one of the only person that I really talked to about me opening up my shop, because I was getting some advice from him, was somebody who was really big into cash for cars. So the craze was still going on. It was everywhere. They were making money hand over fist because scrap metal prices were up really high. And right when I launched, scrap metal tanked. So he was my flagship client that I was going to be able to kind of rely on to get me started. Because when I launched my company, I only need to make $17,000 a year. I was debt free. I had a little bit of savings to put towards this endeavor for a year. I was living in a duplex that I owned, so half of the duplex was paying for it. So I positioned myself to not have to make a lot of money, which I think is really important for young people. Sometimes you don't have to make a ton of money. Being debt free and having that side of freedom can equal a big salary a lot of times.
Right.
But because scrap metal tanked, my client ended up not being able to pay his bills right away, and he laid off half his staff. He brought everything in house, stuff like that. So it ended up me being kind of stuck for really just a couple of weeks until I landed an even bigger client that really took that over, because you never know what's around the corner. You never know how these things are gonna go and play out, because you're at the mercy of other people's industries and other people's businesses.
Right.
If they do well, then the business service providers to that company will also do well. If they do poorly, or if something rocks industry like coronavirus, then you're going to be affected by that too, as well. So it's just interesting kind of thing. So when I launched my agency, that particular client was with me for just a short amount of time, and then ended up being the first one that owed me money. And we're friends. I worked something out with him. He also owned a mechanic shop that I basically got my car worked on free for like 2.5, 3 years, and everything until that credit was paid off. So it was not a fun experience initially, but it turned into a positive, and things are good for both of us now.
I love the strategy that you implemented there to ensure that Ethic was lean and mean and was able to be agile and flexible given the economy, but also the lethargy of some clients, not just in their ability to respond to the work or respond to you, but their ability to pay for it. I've been at the mercy of many clients like that, and it always hurts to have the conversation with them like, hey, sorry, we can't launch your huge campaign because you didn't pay your tab, right?
Yeah.
So, but to your point, like, having, if your initial goal was to make a minimum of $18,000, $17,000, that's surprisingly attainable. That's one of the things that I tell my students, like, you guys can, like, you're entering an economy that may not have room for you. Start your own thing. And you could, you can make a modest living. You could, make your own opportunities, but they're like, it's going to take too long to make any kind of salary. And I'm thinking, like, you can make 18 grand real quick, really quick. If you know what you're doing, you've got the good network. If all the other things are in place, you can make that amount of money very quickly. And in fact, you can make that amount of money on like one specific client, or just a handful of them. So they don't necessarily have a good understanding of the economics of advertising and design in practice. So as soon as I kind of tell them that and give them realistic figures, then they're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, why didn't I think of this before? I'm working at Denny's, you know, like, yeah, you should be doing this right now, especially if you're a student. So
Yeah, students have, and people and individuals who just graduated often have, um, they look at all the hurdles and they get blinded by the opportunities that they have. Yeah, and there's opportunities at every stage of life, and everything. And you know, although I was 29 when I launched my company,
mhm,
um, I was in a position to where I got, you know, paid off the car, got kind of debt free, got to that kind of thing. So I know a lot of students have debt, which is a bummer, but I can tell you as a entrepreneur, as a father of a 2 and a 3-year old, as somebody that has, you know, real estate investments and all these responsibilities, the older you get, the more responsibilities and less time that you have. And I always preach, I talked about this even today. I talk about this every single week, it seems, with somebody, that in advertising and in your personal life too, you have two budgets, you have two pots of money. And for a business to get leads, for example, they have the money pot that they invest in advertising, marketing, stuff like that.
mhm,
And then they have time. Time is such a precious, valuable currency that people don't think about budgeting it. They don't think about how to maximize it and use it,
yep,
where dollars is a little more tangible and it's a little bit easier to understand. But if students think about the time that they have and identify a actionable plan to use that time,
mhm,
and maybe probably sacrifice. And it's not for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with having fun and everything. And I
right,
know that I did, and I think about, you know, how far ahead I would be if I did some more sacrificing beyond what I had already done. But you know, if they don't go out and drink every night of the weekends and everything, if they don't, you know, if they don't binge watch all the time, if they just decide to spend a little bit extra time to learn something and be within the industry that they want to be in and do their own thing rather than working at Denny's, they can
right,
accomplish a lot more. So identifying those things and then just doubling down, and they have to realize is that they have a lot of time. They can invest in doing something like this for 1, 2, 3 years and decide that they don't like it, they don't want to do it. But then they have that skill set, they have that
right,
experience that they can put on a resume, um, and everything. Or they end up loving whatever that thing that they're doing, and then they figured out what it is, and from an early age they got their kickoff, their onset. So that time element is huge for young individuals, because not all of them, but for the majority of them, they have that in spades in comparison to money. And as you get older, what tends to happen is you have more money than you do time,
time, yep,
and everything, and that's where you have to pay for, you know, stuff to get done, as opposed to working and figuring out and doing it on your own and building up your own skill set.
yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I don't know how to follow it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about what. Well, let me ask you this: when you started Ethic, did you have advisors or any mentors that you leaned on to kind of help you guide the business, especially in its formative year, and or even get you to the point where, you know, who you need to talk to actually formalize this company, et cetera? Who are your mentors? Who are your guiding lights?
I I really like the idea of mentors if you can find the right one. And if you go out, go look for a mentor, you want to find somebody who's doing what you want to do, and somebody that is doing it the way that you want to do it, and really interview them. You know, it's a two-way street. Just because someone's willing to be your mentor doesn't mean that they're the right fit for you. So you don't always have to say yes.
Mhm.
So I really like the idea of mentorship, but I'm a big believer that you don't need one. And it's not a good idea to just have one mentor, because then you only have one person's experience. Maybe they're really intelligent, really good, depending on what
Right.
mentor you pick. But I really like the idea of learning from multiple different people, so you get multiple different points of views and opinions. And then it allows you to either pick and choose what you like, what works for you, or identify what successful people are all saying the same thing, and then latch onto that and figure out, 5 out of 5 people that I talked to said the exact same thing. There's got to be something to it, and everything. So for me, when I, because I took a bit of an odd path of having about a decade of knowing what I wanted to do, I spent 10 years learning from people, and mentally logging this information in preparation to launch Ethic. So it wasn't just, hey, I launched my company, I need to find somebody. It was learning from people along the way and being able to take what I learned and apply it to Ethic. And then since I've launched Ethic, I have reached out to other agency owners. I have talked to, I've taken the opportunities to talk with some pretty big people. I have a really good confidant who is a C-level individual at like VaynerMedia. I have my old internship boss from 16 years ago or 15 years ago that I'll reach out to, and we'll spitball and everything, some ideas. I have people, that are outside of the industry and everything that I'll talk to about this. And the neat thing is, especially early on when you're just getting your start, you're not that threatening to them, so they're willing to kind of share a lot. But even as you become more of competitions or competitors, you can still have that collaboration. And it is very rare that you run into somebody that is like, no, I don't want to tell you my secrets. No, I don't want to do anything. People are very eager to talk about themselves a lot of times. So there's that egotistical manner. But they're very eager, and they understand where students and recent graduates have been because they've been there. They understand how it's a struggle. And they understand that now more than ever, because there is a global pandemic, it's even more of a struggle. And it's been a very great silver lining during this thing to make connections and find people that just are looking to help, even if you are an established business or an established professional. People are looking to help one another and figure this out, because really we're in this together, and that camaraderie is really neat to see. And I'll tell you what, if you have half a brain in your head and you're young and you can follow direction and be coachable and you follow up as well too, and you can communicate and just work on that, I mean, people are going to eat you up. They're going to bring you in, and you can easily find somebody that can become that mentor, that coach for you, and take you under your wing. Because I'll tell you from experience, a lot of young people don't follow up. They don't do basic communications that a lot of people.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all that we're looking for. And in tapping into young individuals, there's a lot of resource, a lot of talent there. But you have to communicate. You have to be hungry and want to do what you're doing. Otherwise, A, why are you doing it? Find something else to do that you enjoy, and everything. Or B, the person that is trying to help you is going to become discouraged and like, why am I spending my time on this? Because no one has time. No one has free time nowadays. Everybody's busy.
Yeah, and I found that the mentors that, or the people that want to be mentors, they will give that time willingly, freely. You barely have to ask for it, and I found that, so you and I will be those people later. We are now. I mean, we'll happily give our time and advice. But when we're later in our careers, we're still going to be proactive and want to network and connect with younger people and kind of nudge them along and be annoying. Like, hey, you didn't follow up with me. I've got a lot of things to say, but to your point, yeah, people love, especially successful people, love talking about their successes. That doesn't necessarily mean they're egomaniacs, but what they're trying to do is use themselves as a case study to teach you something. So really, it's not ego driven, it's teacher driven, and I was thinking about the mentors that I've had across my career, and I'll tell you how I started my first business. So I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh. I lived in Warren County, Pennsylvania, in the Allegheny National Forest. Like, I saw bears in my backyard, right? So when I came to Pittsburgh in 2003, I knew nobody or nothing. I had never even been in a city bigger than Erie before. And even my connections to Erie were very minimal. Like I went to Presque Isle and that was about it, right? Never downtown. So it was a huge new world for me. And, you know, I was able to make mentors out of the teachers that I had at my first school. And then even after my second one, I graduated, and a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I just got my bachelor's degree. I don't need to talk to those professors anymore. I don't need to talk to those teachers that shaped 4 years of my life almost in their image, right? And I don't need to talk to them again. But I made it a point to always talk to my design professor, and I lived near him after I moved back to Pittsburgh in 2007. And we would meet up at Panera Bread like once every weekend, and until I got my foot in, you know, I got the job at Heinz, and I was doing some stuff. I was on the AIGA board. But it was when I started my first company, I decided to look at mentors from outside of the design perspective. So I went to SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, thinking like, okay, there's got to be someone that is in advertising or marketing. And if you've ever dealt with SCORE, they're very retired folks there. So I ended up meeting with a retired manager of Mount Lebanon, right? City manager, borough township manager, whatever it is. And I met with him at the Mount Lebanon Library, and he gave me all of this advice that didn't mean anything to me at the time. And it was useful later on, but I'm just thinking like, this guy doesn't know anything about communications or advertising or the things that I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. But what he did give me was good advice on just dealing with people. And as a city manager, you're dealing with residents and businesses constantly. So I learned a lot about patience through him. And if you're in advertising, more specifically, if you're in sales or you're in client representation, or client management rather, you have to have patience. Mm-hmm. So I fortunately was able to build that into my first practice as much as I could. Yeah. And then, but the funny thing about it is that I'm on my fourth company now, and ironically, I'm primarily working with municipalities, which is what that guy represented all those years ago. Mm-hmm. But the connection point here for a design mentor was the people, the designer rather that designed the branding for Mount Lebanon. His name was Dennis Moran. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dennis Moran. He started AIGA Pittsburgh with Rick Landisberg back in the 70s. And Dennis gave me a lot of really great advice and feedback on running a design practice from multiple perspectives, from the client side, from the creative direction side, like everything you need to know. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, like, in hindsight, there were these little seeds that were planted all those years ago that led me to now running a company where I brand communities, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like the seeds were there long ago, and it finally nudged me towards something. But that's the value of those mentors, right? So graduating students can rely on, they could reach out to you and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about your experiences and, you know, put me to work, put me in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the panel for the last few years at like Pitt's AMA and everything. I've done guest lectures and stuff, and it is a incredibly small percentage, because I mention a lot of times this exact thing of going and talking to people, and you know, even, you know, talking to me, something like that, and everybody's engaged. It's always a relevant kind of thing, and it's a small percentage that actually will reach out. And one of the lectures that I gave was at Robert Morris, and the class, the subject turned to mentors and connecting and networking and that kind of stuff. And, and I said, you know, use every opportunity, because you're not just, you know, if someone can't help you because they don't have the skill set or they're not in there, what they're going to do next is they're going to think about, who do I know that does?
Right.
Who do I know that's the right fit to help out? And there it was like 20 some odd students in this class. And I just to ad nauseum kept on saying, ask if you have somebody who's in that industry, in that world, because we're talking about what each of them want to actually do, ask. And I just kept on saying, if you have someone right in front of you, ask, because a lot of the things that these people wanted to do, these students wanted to do, I had connections to make those. And finally, I just had to say, listen, like, I know people. There's a girl in there that in the class that had a dream to do marketing for performing arts. You know, one of my former employees and friend of mine does marketing PR for Pittsburgh Musical Theater. She's incredibly talented and good and everything. And I knew that. And the student just, you know, was just kept on nodding and nodding and nodding. And then I never asked. And I said, you know, ask me. And then I said, okay, you need to go talk to Lindsay. And I said, let's go through this. Let's see what happens. And I would say about 80% of the people that were there, I had somebody that I could connect them with. And I have no idea. I know that this girl actually connected with Lindsay because I heard. But I have no idea who actually did the follow-up and everything. But it's just about that follow-up, and people appreciate that. They don't expect it nowadays. Anybody that's been in the workforce or wants to help individuals, don't expect it. I'm actually offering an internship to a girl today, and part of the internship was to see if she would follow up. And that's what it was contingent on. I was not going to follow up with her because of the way that we had left the last conversation and everything. And I said, if she follows up with me, then it's hers. And she did, and everything. So, you know, she's going to become our intern. If she didn't follow up with me, she would not be our intern. So people like to test, they want to see, because if that's how they're going to be with me, that's how they're going to be with my clients. That's how they're going to be an extension of my company, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, every opportunity, and sometimes get out of your shell. Like, I know that it's tough if you're an introvert and everything, but figure out what works for you of how to connect with people. Maybe it is social media. Maybe it is networking, not face-to-face right now, but someday again, face-to-face. You know, just kind of reaching out and doing Zoom calls or phone calls or something, or just starting with the people that you know that you're comfortable with and saying, hey, this is what I think that I want to do. The other thing that's important is a lot of students don't know what they want to do, which is absolutely okay. But what they should do is figure out, what do I want to do right now? What do I think that I might like doing for the rest of my life, and go after it. Invest that 1, 2, 3, 4 years into seeing if that's what you really like. Because, you know, it might seem like a long period of time, but in the whole course of a 40 some odd year career, you're talking about, you know, probably 2 to 10% of that career building a skill set, getting experience and everything, and then realizing, okay, cool, I want to go spend the 95% of the rest of my career doing something else. Maybe that's what you want. But identify what I'm going to do now.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes, like, you know, I have students that are really interested in just doing branding work. And I have to tell them, like, you know, that's all well and good if that's what you want to do, but it's not the only thing that you're going to do. There's always pieces to doing a brand that you're not even thinking about. So, like, yeah, you got the design aspect down, but you have to think about all the other points of interest that affect a singular brand solution. You know, how's the business going to be affected? What's their business model? What's their framework? What's their communication strategy, marketing strategy, all of those things. How's their supply chain, for God's sakes? You know, you really have to know a lot about a business in order to brand it. And it's not as simple as just making a logo. So those students that really want to make logos, essentially what they have to become are curious researchers, right? And, you know, I've spent, 10 plus years teaching artists and designers They don't like research. They don't like writing, you know? So a lot of that is you have to go outside of yourself to learn exactly what it is you want to do and what you don't want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the things, of course, as you said, the things that you do want to do, follow up with them, invest your time in them, and get really good at it.
Mm-hmm. And people do not, for designers, you know, or any kind of technical, like creative skill or technical skill. So website developers, graphic designers, videographers, and everything, is not about the creative.
Yep.
100%. You have to usually sell something with that creative. So the messaging is really important. But there are a lot, I hear this a lot. I don't really like to work with them because they don't communicate well, because they don't, you know, they just do, they don't ask questions and stuff. You have to be able to do two things. You have to be able to research on your own, but also ask the right questions and figure out protocols. Like, and, you know, one thing that we do for our logo design is we have homework. We actually have people, we have a document that we send out to people and says, fill this all out. This will give us an idea of what you're looking for. And everything.
That
so we
forms
actually
the creative
standardize
brief.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, from that, you also have to listen to what they're saying, because a lot of times what they fill out is a little bit different than what they're saying. So being good at communication is equally as important as your skill set on Photoshop or Illustrator or Final Cut, any of those kind of things. And the other thing that, you know, usually a lot of designers hate and they're fearful of is sales. You know, if you're going to work for yourself, you have to do sales for one thing. But if you're going to work for somebody else, you can't think of sales as just saying, give me money and I'll give you this. Because if I have this idea that I really want to work on, because 80% of the work that I'm doing is just paying the bills and 20% I'm passionate about, because that happens a lot of time with designers, but I really want to do this idea because I believe that it's the right idea. I'm going to have fun doing it. I'm excited about it. If I can't sell that to my boss, if I can't sell that to the client, if I can't get that soul, that idea, then that project is not going to move forward.
Right.
So you have to figure out a way to communicate that, which it can't just be, this is going to be really cool, it's going to look like this and everything. It also has to be, well, this is what the results are going to give you. We're thinking that if we do it this way, it's going to be, you know, if we mess with the advertising, we're going to do this advertising, this video, this commercial, this way, we think that we're going to get more actions. We're going to get more engagements. We're going to be able to draw more attention, and in turn, increase your sales, increase your brand awareness and stuff like that. Thinking that and communicating that is huge. There's a lot of phenomenal artists out there, but in the advertising world, you can't just be a good artist. You also have to sell and help the client achieve what they're trying to do through creative.
Can I tell you one of the favorite things I like about running a design company? Sales. I have a lot of fun with interacting with people and pitching them ideas and selling them on ideas and being honest and genuine through that process. I had a lot of marketing students this past semester now. And a lot of them were afraid, like, oh my God, I'm not going to get a marketing job with this Fortune 500 company. And I'm thinking, just like, go into sales. Like, it's simple. Just go into sales. You could actually make more money doing sales than you ever could as just a salaried marketing person, right? Yeah. Especially if you're an extroverted people person. Like, that trait seems to go so much farther than, you know, being an introverted salesperson and knowing everything about the product.
Yeah. And that's funny, because when I was figuring out what I wanted to do in college, before I had my aha moment of an ad agency, that's what I wanted to do. I you know, my degree is in video and audio production. My degree is on the creative side of things, primarily. Right. And I remember dropping off a tape, because back then you would actually have to drop off a tape with a commercial to a TV station, and they would plug it in and play it, and, you know, for their airtime. And I remember going to the parking lot and easily being able to pick out, that's a news or creative person's car. And then those BMWs, Mercedes, and like all these luxury cars are salespeople. And having me realize, well, I want nice things, but I like the creative side of things as well too. And that moment is one of the things that actually led me to wanting to be able to do both, but knowing how important both sides were to do, at least for my path and everything. And money, money doesn't buy happiness and everything. I'm a big believer in that. But you have to have money to survive in today's day and age.
Right.
And lack of money is a lot of stress, and it produces unhappiness. So you don't need to have a lot of money, but you can't get in a situation where you have debt and bills and worry and you can't pay them, that kind of thing. And that's why I think it's important to do what you're passionate about, but also you have to think about fiscally. Like you have to make a living to live the way that you want to live freely.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, if, to any marketing or design students out there that are reticent about doing sales jobs, like, hey, that's a good living that you could tap into for sure. And you still get to have that aspect of creativity. And that's one of the things that I try to tell my students is that, yeah, you could, if you want to work in an agency and you want to be a graphic designer, that's all well and good. That's a very competitive field. Sometimes those agencies are very fickle and they don't hire a lot of designers. So you're going to have to wait. But if you want into that agency life, then, sales is a good way to do that. Even client representation, a lot of marketing folks, that's where they get started before they can work on creative marketing and things like that. So being able to manage the clients and their expectations and to be a good buffer between the client and the creatives is critical, especially if you lean more towards the creative side of things. You're going to be able to speak both languages, and that makes for an even more immersive but more rewarding experience, I think, for all involved.
Yeah. And we're talking about a very unique person. We're talking about somebody that can operate both sides of the brains. And it's not for everybody. But at least have an appreciation and understanding. If you know that your left brain, have an appreciation and understanding for right brain is useful in what we do. Tim McLaughlin, did I get that right? He's one of the co-owners of 321 Blank. It's a great shop in Aspinwall. He says all the time that advertising is a bunch of people that are working together that should never be working together. In no other industry do you have accounting strategists, salespeople, creatives, like all these different mindsets trying to blend and work together, because it's very different people, which makes it fun in a way and makes it complicated in a way too.
Right. That's absolutely true. So students, double major or pick up a minor.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but then again, I mean, the majors and the minors they're nice if they're in the same thing, but the reality of it is that tons of individuals are not doing what they went to school to do and stuff. So it does help. Like for me, I have video and audio production majors. I have minors in marketing, minors in sociology, and academic focus in the visual arts. I started blending those things together because I knew that's what I wanted to do a little bit and everything. I would actually say if you could graduate in 3.5 years by not taking a minor, do that and then spend 6 months getting the experience, because that's going to be more valuable than a minor from the university, which, no offense, Pitt, great school, all that kind of stuff. But, getting that degree and then having a leg up on experience is probably going to get you further ahead than an extra minor. But, I'm speaking from experience. I could have graduated in 3.5 years. I picked up my sociology minor because I wanted to keep on hanging out in college.
Sure. Yeah. The sooner you enter the market, the more work experience you're going to develop, and that's going to make you more creative and competitive. And especially at that point in your life, you're still relatively young. So you still have that learner's mindset where you're a sponge. So you're going to be able to learn from your art directors, your creative directors, your CMOs, et cetera. And, you know, by the time that your peers enter the industry, you'll be so far ahead of them, not only experience wise, but just mentally, like you've leveled up so many times.
Yeah. And I have a, actually a new business call in just a few minutes and everything. So I would just also want to see, is there anything that I can do for you or your students or anything else that that can be done beyond this video, which is great. It's an awesome conversation. It's always fun.
Well, what I would recommend is for anyone watching, any students, wherever you're at, to reach out to Jeff, you know, and like, this is one of those things where I'm not going to give you his contact information. You got to find him, right? Like, be proactive and step outside of your shell. Find him on LinkedIn. You know, that's how we connected. You know, find his website, reach out, contact, call, email, reach out to Jeff and ask him for, you know, buy him a digital cup of coffee, basically, right? You know, and say, hey, I may not have anything I can offer you other than, you know, a willingness to learn and listen. And hopefully you guys will be able to make a friend out of Jeff and, you know, gain some advice, especially now when you're starting your careers, as much advice as you can get as possible. And I think Jeff's a really great place to start there. So I would say to you, sir, if you were able to make yourself available to them, which I'm sure you obviously would, then I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do that. And it doesn't also, you know, taken away from this, it doesn't have to be reaching out to me always per se. If you think of somebody that's doing exactly what you want to be doing or what you think you want to be doing, reach out to them. And in all honesty, it could be somebody huge. It could be somebody famous. It could be somebody, you know, that is part of a multi-billion-dollar company as well too. If they're doing what you're doing, work hard and don't just send one email. Don't just send one LinkedIn message. Keep at it. And, you know, because if it keeps that dripping and going after that, you know, to talk to Mark Cuban or whoever, Gary Vaynerchuk or whoever is inspiring you.
Those guys are accessible too.
They are.
They really
it just takes a little bit of luck. And you never
gotta work for it. Yeah.
Yep. Takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of persistence and everything, but you'll see. But you know, I'm happy to talk with any of the students, anybody that comes across this video, you know, reach out. I always have an open door policy to where I'll reserve some time to talk about what we do with anybody in my experience to just help them along with no other agenda than a good conversation.
Sounds great, Jeff. Well, I can think of no better place than to end our conversation than on that generous offer there. So thank you again for your time. Hopefully we can do this again sometime soon. And students, graduates, reach out to Jeff. He knows what he's talking about.
Sounds good. Thank you, RJ. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. All right.